wrapping my mind around the idea that Homer's Odyssey is one of the first writings in history. Said to be written probably before the Old Testament, it was originally written in ancient Greek. It seems to hold magic and richness, and I'm not sure that the English words can really capture some of the robust meanings as much as it tries. Hello, I'm Daisy. Welcome to my channel. In Book 3 of the Odyssey by Homer, we join Telemachus, clear-headed son of Odysseus, as he journeys on the high seas to look for his father, who has gone missing for over 7 years since his departure to fight in the Trojan War. Book 3 is titled The Lord of the Western Approaches, and we will meet a plethora of characters. Gods, demigods. The demigods, they're the children of the pairing of gods and humans. There's going to be kings, kings' sons, spear fighters, ship steersmen, and even goldsmiths. I've created a who's who sheet in an attempt to keep track of the characters, and I beg pardon to those that know the story and also know how to pronounce these names and the name of the regions, which seem to possess like magic in their complexity. And I've noticed that one of the things that I have found challenging is that there's also so many different ways of spelling the same name or the name of a city or region. So that even adds to the little bit of confusion. But if you've read it, you'll know exactly what I'm saying. So, and if you haven't, you'll pick up that I'm actually saying the same thing. While the main event is about a son in search of his father in this particular chapter, and he's doing this with the guidance of a goddess, to me it seemed that this whole chapter is really so much more. Imagine your whole world has been happening in your village, and that's all you know. And now you're traveling across the sea. Even the sea is a stranger, and even the sky, so vast, doesn't look the same. And you're off now to meet peoples of foreign lands. You have no mother or no father with you. Yet, what gives you that passion and you move on steadfast because you're on a mission? That kind of stuff is sure to mold you. I know Odysseus is the main character, but let me tell you, we discover the noble nature of his son, and that, for right now, has won my heart. This epic poem takes place in the Bronze Age, and there are propositions supported by archaeological evidence that indicate that there was a Greek-led attack on Troy, and that is what earns Homer's Odyssey a place in the historical bookshelves. If not for the storyline, this read offers an insight to richness of culture, fashion, economy, the rituals, the politics, the human spirit, and the relationship with supernatural beings that help us dig deeper into man's indomitable spirit. Despite Athena's words when she reminded us all that in death we are alone, and she said, "As for death, of course all men must suffer it. The gods may love a man, but they can't help him when cold death comes." Ooh, that's kind of bone-chilling, right? So Telemachus meets King Nestor of Pylos, who really has not much to say of Odysseus' whereabouts and takes time to recount the fate of Agamemnon and Menelaus after the fall of Troy. It is in this explanation that we make voyage through the Mediterranean on various ports of call, Sparta, and Egypt as well. One of my favorite parts in Book 3 is the detail of the ritual. First, there was a feast taking place on the beach when Telemachus was arriving. So imagine you're on a ship approaching land, and you see 81 black bulls and 4,500 people celebrating. That must be a sight. They describe a hecatomb as a great public sacrifice which consisted of 100 oxen, and you'll notice that the next day King Nestor offers a sacrifice to Athena of a heifer. So it looks like two different things were happening. Obviously, the day before and then, the next day. So this is something a bit different because he orders his goldsmith to gild the horns with gold, and this ritual required fresh cut barley and flowers, also lustral waters, and that means that this water was special water because it was purified. So maybe there was a magi there, or a high priestess or priestess of sorts, and it also included bristles from the victim, followed by the invocation to the gods. So Homer goes on to paint the scene by further describing the cutting blow, the gathering of the blood, the celebration, and the quartering of the heifer. Short of the smell, a blink of the eye, and we're right smack in the middle of the Bronze Age, in a ritual gathering. So Book 3 has so many characters, some names of people which we may never hear of again in the upcoming chapters. But to me, there was a sense of nobility about the idea that King Nestor would take the time to mention these people that battled, these people that chose to sacrifice their lives for a better good, for a better cause, something bigger than them. And in that sense, their lives mattered, that their life and death was of value. And it made me think of my life, my time, my chapter when I was a police officer, and wondered if I had died in the line of duty, would my name have mattered to anyone else but my father and mother? The idea that it mattered to Homer to tell the story in that way, him being a bard and a poet of the Bronze Age, it makes me think the Greeks should be proud people, one worthy of grace from the gods. And with that, please do take a minute, show me some love and like this video, and I in turn will turn the page and invite you to journey with me with Homer in the Odyssey, translated from the Greek by Robert Fitzgerald. Book 3, The Lord of the Western Approaches. The sun rose on the flawless brimming sea into a sky all brazen. All one brightening for gods immortal and for mortal men on ploughlands kind with grain. And facing sunrise, the voyagers now lay off Pylos town, compact stronghold of Neleus. On the shore, black bulls were being offered by the people to the blue-maned god who makes the islands tremble. 9 congregations, each 500 strong, led out 9 bulls apiece to sacrifice, taking the tripes to eat, while on their altars thigh bones in fat lay burning for the god. Here they put in, furled sail, and beached the ship. But Telemachus hung back in disembarking, so that Athena turned and said, "Not the least shyness now, Telemachus. You came across the open sea for this, to find out where the great earth hides your father, and what the doom was that he came upon. Go to old Nestor, master charioteer, so we may broach the storehouse of his mind. Ask him with courtesy, and in his wisdom he will tell you history and no lies." But clear-headed Telemachus replied, "Mentor, how can I do it? How approach him? I have no practice in elaborate speeches, and for a young man to interrogate an old man seems disrespectful." But the gray-eyed goddess said, "Reason and heart will give you words, Telemachus, and a spirit will counsel others. I should say the gods were never indifferent to your life." She went on quickly, and he followed her to where the men of Pylos had their altars. Nestor appeared enthroned among his sons, while friends around them skewered the red beef or held it scorching. When they saw the strangers, a hail went up, and all that crowd came forward calling out invitations to the feast. Pisistratus in the lead, the young prince, caught up their hands in his and gave them places on curly lambskins flat on the sea sand near Thersimedes, his brother, and his father. He passed them bits of the food of sacrifice, and, pouring wine in a golden cup, he said to Pallas Athena, daughter of Zeus, "Friend, I must ask you to invoke Poseidon. You find us at this feast, kept in his honor. Make the appointed offering then and pray, and give the honey-eyed wine cup to your friend so he may do the same. He, too, must pray to the gods on whom all men depend. But he is just my age. You are the senior, so here, I give the goblet first to you." And he put the cup of sweet wine in her hand. Athena liked his manners, and the equity that gave her precedence with the cup of gold. So she besought Poseidon at some length. "Earth-shaker, listen and be well disposed. Grant to your petitioners everything they ask. Above all, honor to Nestor and his sons. Second, to every man of Pylos' town a fair gift in exchange for this hecatomb. Third, may Telemachus and I perform the errand on which last night we put to sea." This was the prayer of Athena, granted in every particular by herself. She passed the beautiful wine cup to Telemachus, who tipped the wine and prayed as she had done. Meanwhile the spits were taken off the fire, portions of crisp meat for all. They feasted, and when they had eaten and drunk their fill, at last they heard from Nestor, prince of charioteers. "Now is the time," he said, "for a few questions, now that our young guests have enjoyed their dinner. Who are you, strangers? Where are you sailing from, and where to? Down the highways of sea-water? Have you some business here? Or are you now reckless wanderers of the sea, like those corsairs who risk their lives to prey on other men?" Clear-headed Telemachus responded cheerfully, for Athena gave him heart. By her design, his quest for news about his father's wandering would bring him fame in the world's eyes. And so he said, "Nestor, pride of Aeacians, Neleus' son, you ask where we are from, and I can tell you. Our home port is under Mount Neon, Ithaca. We are not here on Ithacan business, though, but on my own. I want news of my father, Odysseus, known for his great heart, and I will comb the wide world for it. People say he fought along with you when Troy was taken. As to the other men who fought that war, we know where each one died and how he died. But Zeus allotted my father death and mystery. No one can say for sure where he was killed, whether some hostile landsman or the sea, the storm waves on the deep sea, got the best of him. And this is why I come to you for help. Tell me of his death, sir, if perhaps you witnessed it, or have heard some wanderer tell the tale. The man was born for trouble. Spare me no part of it for kindness' sake, but keep the scene before me as you saw it. If ever Odysseus, my noble father, served you by promise kept, or work accomplished in the land of Troy, where you Aeacians suffered, recall those things for me the way they were." And then Nestor, prince of charioteers, made answer, "Dear friend, you take me back to all the trouble we went through in that country, we Aeacians. Rough days aboard ship on the cloudy sea cruising away for pillage after Achilles. Rough days of battle around Priam's town. Our losses, then so many good men gone. Ares' great Aias lies there. Achilles lies there. Patroclus, too, the wondrous counselor. And my own strong and princely son, Antilochus, fastest man of them all, and a born fighter. Other miseries, and many, we endured there. Could any mortal man tell the whole story? Not if you stayed 5 years or 6 to hear how hard it was for the flower of Achaeans, you'd go home weary, and the tale untold. Think, we were there 9 years, and we tried everything. All stratagems against them, up to the bitter end that Zeus begrudged us. And as to stratagems, no man would claim Odysseus' gift for those. He had no rivals, your father, at the tricks of war. Your father. Well, I must say I marvel at the sight of you. Your manner of speech couldn't be more like his. One would say no boy could speak so well. And all the time at Ilion, he and I were never at odds in council or assembly, saw things the same way. We had one mind between us in all the good advice we gave the Argives. But when we plundered Priam's town and tower and took to the ships, God scattered the Achaeans. He had a mind to make homecoming hard for them, seeing they would not think straight nor behave, or some would not. So evil days came on them. And she who had been angered, Zeus' dangerous gray-eyed daughter, did it, starting a fight between the sons of Atreus. First, they were fools enough to call assembly at sundown, unheard of hour. The Achaean soldiers turned out, soaked with wine, to hear talk about it from their commanders. Menelaus hangered them to get organized, time to ride home on the sea's broad back, he said. But Agamemnon wouldn't hear of it. He wanted to hold the troops, make sacrifice, a hecatomb, something to pacify Athena's rage. Folly again to think that he could move her. Will you change the will of the everlasting gods in a night or a day's time? The two men stood there hammering at each other until the army got to its feet with a roar and no decision, wanting it both ways. That night no one slept well, everyone cursing someone else. Here was the bane from Zeus. At dawn, we dragged our ships to the lordly waters, stowed aboard all our plunder and the slave women in their low hip girdles. But half the army elected to stay behind with Agamemnon as their corps commander. The other half embarked and pulled away. We made good time, the huge sea smooth before us, and held our rights when we reached Tenedos, being wild for home. But Zeus, not willing yet, now cruelly set us at odds a second time, and one lot turned, put back in the rolling ships under command of the subtle captain Odysseus. Their notion was to please Lord Agamemnon, not I. I fled with every ship I had. I knew fate had some devilment brewing there. Diomedes roused his company and fled too, and later Menelaus, the red-haired captain, caught up with us at Lesbos. While we mulled over the long sea route, unsure whether to lay our course northward at Chios, keeping the Isle of Prisca off to port, or inside Chios, coasting by windy Mimas, we asked for a sign from heaven. And the sign came to cut across the open sea at Euboea, and lose no time putting our ills behind us. The wind freshened astern, and the ships ran before the wind on paths of the deep sea fish, making Geraestos before dawn. We thanked Poseidon with many a charred thigh bone for that crossing. On the 4th day, Diomedes' company under full sail put in at Argo port, and I held on for Pylos. The fair wind, once heaven set it blowing, never failed. So this, dear child, was how I came from Troy, and saw no more of the others, lost or saved. But you are welcome to all I've heard since then at home. I have no reason to keep it from you. The Myrmidon spear fighters returned, they say, under the son of lion-hearted Achilles, and so did Poias' great son Philoctetes. Idomeneus brought his company back to Crete. The sea took not a man from him of all who lived through the long war. And even as far away as Ithaca you've heard of Agamemnon, how he came home, how Aegisthus waited to destroy him but paid a bitter price for it in the end. This is a good thing now for a man to leave a son behind, like the son who punished Aegisthus for the murder of his great father. You too are tall and well set up, I see. Be brave, you too, so men in time to come will speak well of you." Then Telemachus said, "Nestor, pride of Achaeans, Neleus' son, that was revenge, and far and wide the Achaeans will tell the tale in song for generations. I wish the gods would buckle his arms on me. I'd be revenged for outrage on my insidious and brazen enemies. But no such happy lot was given to me or to my father. Still, I must hold fast." To this Lord Nestor of Gerenia said, "My dear young friend, now that you speak of it, I hear a crowd of suitors for your mother lives with you, uninvited, making trouble. Now tell me how you take this. Do the people side against you, hearkening to some oracle? Who knows? Your father might come home some day alone or backed by troops and have it out with them. If gray-eyed Athena loved you the way she did Odysseus in the old days, in Troy country, where we all went through so much, never have I seen the gods help any man as openly as Athena did your father. Well, as I say, if she cared for you that way, there would be those to quit this marriage game." But prudently Telemachus replied, "I can't think what you say will ever happen, sir. It's a dazzling hope, but not for me. It could not be, even if the gods willed it." At this, gray-eyed Athena broke in, saying, "What strange talk you permit yourself, Telemachus? A god could save the man by simply wishing it, from the farthest shore in the world. If I were he, I should prefer to suffer years at sea and then be safe at home. Better that than a knife at my hearthside where Agamemnon found it, killed by adulterers. Though as for death, of course all men must suffer it. The gods may love a man, but they can't help him when cold death comes to lay him on his bier." And Telemachus replied, "Mentor, grievously though we miss my father, why go on as if that homecoming could happen? You know the gods had settled it already, years ago, when dark death came for him. But there is something else I imagine Nestor can tell us, knowing as he does the ways of men. They say his rule goes back over 3 generations, so long, so old, it seems death cannot touch him. Nestor, Neleus' son, true sage, say how did the lord of the great plains, Agamemnon, die? What was the trick Aegisthus used to kill that better man? And Menelaus, where was he? Not at Argos, in Achaia, but blown off course, held up in some far country. Is that what gave the killer nerve to strike?" Lord Nestor of Gerenia made answer, "Well, now, my son, I'll tell you the whole story. You know, yourself, what would have come to pass if red-haired Menelaus back from Troy. He had caught Aegisthus in that house alive. There would have been no burial mound for him, but dogs and carrion birds to huddle on him in the fields beyond the wall, and not a soul bewailing him for the great wrong he committed. While we were hard-pressed in the war at Troy, he stayed safe inland in the grazing country, making light talk to win Agamemnon's queen. But the lady Clytemnestra, in the first days, rebuffed him, being faithful still. Then, too, she had at hand, as her companion, a minstrel Agamemnon left attending her, charged with her care when he took ship for Troy. Then came the fated hour when she gave in. Her lover tricked the poet and marooned him on a bare island for the seabirds picking, and took for her home as he and she desired. Many thigh bones he burned on the gods' altars, and many a woven and golden ornament hung to bedeck them in his satisfaction. He had not thought life held such glory for him. Now Menelaus and I sailed home together on friendly terms from Troy, but when we came off Sunian Point in Attica, the ship still running free, Onetor's son, Pontus, the steersman of Menelaus' ship, fell over with a death grip on the tiller. Some unseen arrow from Apollo hit him. No man handled the ship better than he did in a high wind and at sea, so Menelaus put down his longing to get on, and landed to give this man full honor in funeral. His own luck turned then. Out on the wine-dark sea in the murmuring hills again, he made Cape Malea, but Zeus, who views the wide world, sent a gloom over the ocean, and a howling gale came on with seas increasing, mountainous, parting the ships and driving half toward Crete, where the Cadonians live by the Iardanos River. Off Gorton's coastline in the misty sea there a reef, a razorback, cuts through the water, and every westerly piles up a pounding surf along the left side, going towards Phaistos. Big seas buffeted back to the narrow stone. They were blown here, and fought in vain for sea room. The ships kept going in to their destruction, slammed on the reef. The crews were saved, but now those 5 that weathered it got off to southward, taken by wind and current down to Egypt. And there Menelaus stayed. He made a fortune in sea traffic among those distant races, but while he did so, the foul crime was planned and carried out in Argos by Aegisthus, who ruled over golden Mycenae 7 years. 7 long years, with Agamemnon dead, he held the people down before the vengeance. But in the 8th year, back from exile in Attica, Orestes killed the snake who killed his father. He gave his hateful mother and her soft man a tomb together, and proclaimed the funeral day a festal day for all the Argive people. That day Lord Menelaus of great war cry made port with all the gold his ships could carry. And this should give you pause, my son. Don't stay too long away from home, leaving your treasure there and brazen suitors near. They'll squander all you have or take it from you, and then how will your journey serve? I urge you, though, to call on Menelaus, he being but lately home from distant parts in the wide world. A man could well despair of getting home at all, if the winds blew him over the great South Sea, that weary waste. Even the wintering birds delay 1 winter more before the northward crossing. Well, take your ship and crew and go by water, or, if you'd rather go by land, here are horses, a car, and my own sons for company as far as the ancient land of Lacedaemon, and Menelaus, the red-haired captain there. Ask him with courtesy, and in his wisdom he will tell you history and no lies. While Nestor talked, the sun went down the sky and gloom came on the land. And now the gray-eyed goddess Athena said, Sir, this is all most welcome and to the point. But why not slice the bulls' tongues now, and mix libations for Poseidon and the gods? Then we can all retire. High time we did. The light is going under the dark world's rim. Better not linger at the sacred feast. When Zeus' daughter spoke, they turned to listen. And soon the squires brought water for their hands, while stewards filled the wine bowls and poured out a fresh cup full for every man. The company stood up to fling the tongues and a shower of wine over the flames, then drank their thirst away. Now finally Telemachus and Athena bestirred themselves, turning away to the ship. But Nestor put a hand on each and said, Now Zeus forbid, and the other gods as well, that you should spend the night on board, and leave me as though I were some pauper without a stitch, no blankets in his house, no piles of rugs, no sleeping soft for host or guest. Far from it. I have all these blankets and deep-piled rugs, and while I live, the only son of Odysseus will never make his bed on ship's deck. No, not while sons of mine are left at home to welcome any guest who comes to us. The gray-eyed goddess Athena answered him, You are very kind, sir, and Telemachus should do as you ask. That is the best thing. He will go with you, and will spend the night under your roof. But I must join our ship and talk to the crew, to keep their spirits up, since I'm the only senior in the company. The rest are boys who shipped for friendship's sake, no older than Telemachus, any of them. Let me sleep out, then, by the black hole's side, last night at least. At daybreak, I'll be off to see the Coconians about a debt they owe me, an old one, and no trifle. As for your guest, send him off in a car with one of your sons, and give him thoroughbreds, a racing team. Even as she spoke, Athena left them, seeming a sea-hawk in a clap of wings, and all the Achaeans of Pylos town looked up, astounded. Awed then by what his eyes had seen, the old man took Telemachus' hand and said warmly, My dear child, I can have no fears for you, no doubt about your conduct or your heart, if at your age the gods are your companions. Here we had someone from Olympus, clearly the glorious daughter of Zeus, his third child, who held your father dear among the Argives. O lady, hear me. Grant an illustrious name to me and to my children and my dear wife. A noble heifer shall be yours in sacrifice, one that no man has ever yoked or driven. My gift to you, her horns all sheathed in gold. So he ended praying, and Athena heard him. Then Nestor of Gerenia led them all, his sons and sons-in-law, to his great house. And in they went to the famous hall of Nestor, taking their seats on thrones and easy chairs, while the old man mixed water in a bowl with sweet red wine, mellowed 11 years before his housekeeper uncapped the jar. He mixed and poured his offering, repeating prayers to Athena, daughter of royal Zeus. The others made libation and drank deep. Then all the company went to their quarters, and Nestor of Gerenia showed Telemachus under the echoing eastern entrance hall to a fine bed near the bed of Pisistratus, captain of spearmen, his unmarried son. Then he lay down in his own inner chamber, where his dear faithful wife had smoothed his bed. When dawn spread out her fingertips of rose, Lord Nestor of Gerenia, charioteer, left his room for a throne of polished stone, white and gleaming as though with oil, that stood before the main gate at the palace. Neleus here had sat before him, masterful in kingship. Neleus long ago prey to death, gone down to the night of the underworld. So Nestor held his throne and scepter now, lord of the western approaches to Achaia. And perfectly his sons came out to join him, leaving the palace, Echephron and Stratos, Perseus and Aratos, and Thrasymmedes, and after them the prince Pisistratus, bringing Telemachus along with him. Seeing all present, the old Lord Nestor said, Dear sons, here's my wish, and do it briskly to please the gods. Athena first of all, my guest in daylight at our holy feast. One of you must go for a young heifer and have the cowherd lead her from the pasture. Another, call on Lord Telemachus' ship to invite his crewmen, leaving two behind. And someone else, again, send for the goldsmith, Larches, to gild the horns. The rest stay here together. Tell the servants a ritual feast will be prepared in hall. Tell them to bring seeds, firewood, and fresh water. Before he finished, they were about these errands. The heifer came from the pasture, the crewmen of Telemachus from the ship. The smith arrived, bearing the tools of his trade, hammer and anvil, and the precision tongs he handled fiery gold with. And Athena came, as a god comes, numinous to the rites. The smith now gloved each horn in a pure foil beaten out of the gold that Nestor gave him, a glory and delight for the goddess' eyes. While Echephron and Stratos held the horns, Aratos brought the clear lustral water in a bowl quivering with fresh cut flowers, a basket of barley in his other hand. Thrasymmedes, who could stand his ground in war, stood steady, with a sharp two-bladed axe, for the stroke of sacrifice, and Perseus held the bowl for the blood. And now Nestor, strewing the barley grains and water drops, pronounced his invocation to Athena, and burned a pinch of bristles from the victim. When prayers were said, and all the grain was scattered, great-hearted Thrasymmedes, in a flash, swung the axe, at one blow cutting through the neck tendons. The heifer's spirit failed. Then all the women gave a wail of joy, daughters, daughters-in-law, and the lady Eurydice, Clymene's eldest daughter. But the men still held the heifer, shored her up from the wide earth where the living go their ways, until Pisistratus cut her throat across. The black blood ran, and life ebbed from her marrow. The carcass now sank down, and they disjointed shoulder and thigh bone, wrapping them in fat, 2 layers, folded, with raw strips of flesh. Those offerings Nestor burned on the split wood fire and moistened with red wine. His sons took up 5 tin forks in their hands, while the altar flame ate through the bones, and bits of tripe went round. Then came the carving off the quarters, and they spitted morsels of lean meat on the long, sharp tines and broiled them at arm's length upon the fire. Polycaste, a fair girl, Nestor's youngest, had meanwhile given a bath to Telemachus, bathing him first, then rubbing him with oil. She held fine clothes and a cloak to put around him when he came godlike from the bathing place. Then out he went to take his place with Nestor. When the best cuts were broiled and off the spits, they all sat down to banquet. Gentle squires kept every golden wine cup brimming full, and so they feasted to their heart's content, until the prince of charioteers commanded, "Sons, harness the blood mares for Telemachus, hitch up the car, and let him take the road." They swung out smartly to do the work, and hooked the handsome horses to a chariot shaft. The mistress of the stores brought up provisions of bread and wine, with victuals fit for kings, and Telemachus stepped up on the painted car. Just as his elbow stood Pausanias, captain of spearmen, reins in hand. He gave a flick to the horses, and with streaming manes they ran for the open country. The tall town of Pylos sank behind them in the distance, as all day long they kept the harness shaking. The sun was low, and shadows crossed the lanes when they arrived at Pherae. There Diocles, son of Ortilochus, whom Alpheus fathered, welcomed the young men, and they slept the night. But up when the young dawn's fingertips of rose opened in the east, they hitched the team once more to the painted car, and steered out eastward through the echoing gate, whipping their fresh horses into a run. That day they made the grain lands of Lacedaemon, where, as the horses held to a fast clip, they kept on to their journey's end. Behind them the sun went down, and all the roads grew dark. End of Book 3.